Hey guys, it's Spooked and welcome back to my Steven Universe Reviewed series. Today's episode was Beach City Drift, and this has to be my favourite episode out of the 5 episodes we got so far. This episode did so much good, from the soundtrack to the scenery. I just loved every element of the episode. I love the fact we got to see Stevonnie again. The last time we saw her was back in We Need to Talk, but she didn't have that much of a speaking role. The last proper episode we had was Alone Together, and it's a great thing to see her again. I love how this week we've got to see older characters from season 1 reintroduced into the show. Every character is getting fair development throughout the season, but without further ado, let's begin. This episode starts off at Greg's car wash. Steven is practicing his racing skills in Greg's new car. Then Connie comes around and Greg shows her and Steven all the cool features about the car. Steven notices the ground shaking and Bumblebee shows up. Just kidding, it's actually Kevin. Steven instantly sees Kevin and gets triggered at him. Kevin is confused where he'd seen the kids before, and Connie urges him that it was just a mistake and he looked like someone else. Kevin then speeds off, and Steven and Connie explain to Greg what had happened at the dance in Alone Together. Steven and Connie discuss their feelings towards Kevin and decide that they should challenge Kevin to a race. They fuse into Stevonnie and get into a car. Kevin starts to tease Steven and Connie after he realizes that they were from the dance. This makes Stevonnie angry and more determined to beat Kevin in a race. They get to the top of the hill and the race begins. This is by far my favourite part of the episode because I love the scenery and soundtrack in this episode. And this particular scene is the best part of the episode. We haven't had an episode like this before, we haven't had a racing episode before, so this is an interesting thing to add to the list of Steven Universe episodes. And the racing animation is really nice as well. They continue racing until Kevin admits that the reason he acts so cocky and such is because his little brother is ill. But it turns out this is just a sick prank from Kevin, and this makes Stevonnie even more angry, causing them to defuse and stop the car. Steven and Connie talk things out, and they agree that they shouldn't be racing to beat Kevin, but just to win for each other. The race starts back up, and this is when we get a glimpse of the scenery of a beach city at nighttime view, which is by far my favourite scene of scenery, probably in the whole show. By the end of the race, Kevin has won, and he laughs in Stevonnie's face for winning. But Stevonnie be's a good sport and congratulates Kevin for his victory. The episode ends with Kevin yelling and Stevonnie riding off into the distance. Now let me move on to things I liked and disliked about this episode. Well, firstly, as I've stated before, I love the soundtrack and scenery of this episode. It is by far my favourite episode out of the 5 episodes we got in the first week of the Steven Nuke. It reintroduced 2 characters we saw in season 1, and it was a unique episode due to the fact it being a racing episode. This was the 3rd episode we've had so far with a character being sort of a dick, and I'm glad we're getting to see them again as more recurring characters than just rather one-time episode characters, such with Marty and Kevin. Now, I can honestly not list the dislike for this episode because I felt it was the best so far out of Summer of Steven. Everything it does was fun, it had a good pacing, and it got everything done in one episode. It strengthened the bond between Steven and Connie as how they took down Kevin by not worrying about him. Overall, I have to give this episode a 9.75 out of 10. Join me next time for my review of Restaurant Wars.